My childhood was good. I came from a good, decent, loving family. You know, like any other family, I guess, you know, we had some ups and downs, but for the most part, you know, I had a good childhood. I went to some of the best schools, and I just, you know, ever since graduating high school, I chose the route of working at a younger age. One of the things that I do regret is not going to college and going forward with that. And but I mean, as far as my childhood, I had a good childhood. Oh, well, I mean, my life was good. At that time, um, you know, I was spending time, you know, doing recreational things. Primarily, I worked. I worked as a loan officer for a mortgage company, and I evaluated borrowers' potential to determine whether or not they qualified for a home loan. You know, prior to my arrest, you know, Countrywide had a great and stellar name. Unfortunately, after I got arrested and I came to prison, their name was, you know, it's anonymous for being involved in, you know, subprime mortgages and the mortgage, you know, collapsing. But no, life was good. It was, I mean, I was any other, you know, regular citizen that pretty much, right? Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing is that if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. You know, the majority of the inmates here and the guys around me, you know, were either involved in gangs or they were involved in, you know, crazy lifestyles, and I just, you know, I can't relate. I wasn't, and you know, I'm out of my element here. I guess, yeah, you know, I could say. I was arrested on November 8th, but prior to that, my cousin's body was discovered on the 4th. And during that time, when his body was discovered, I was already en route or near my ex-girlfriend's home in Arkansas. And, you know, when I heard the news, I immediately contacted my mother and spoke with some family members, and at that point made arrangements to get back to Dallas. And even then, I stayed in contact with the lead detective, who was Detective Wynn, and I offered, you know, any information or anything I could do to help. And I even mentioned to him that when I got into Dallas, or even while I was in Arkansas, through through my cell phone, I stayed in contact with this detective. And so he knew where I was the whole time, and I mentioned to him, as soon as I get to Dallas, I will arrange an opportunity to come to your office and talk to you. I arrived in Dallas on November 7th. And quickly, you just mentioned what happened on November 21st. I think you meant the 2nd, because that's, well, actually, it was after the 2nd. It was November 4th is when my cousin's body was discovered. And on the 7th, that evening, is when I arrived in Dallas. Even that evening, around 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, I contacted Detective Wynn to go visit with him. And at that point, when I contacted the Dallas Police Department, they had notified me just to get with them the next day, to get with him tomorrow and make arrangements to come to the police station. And I did. And even the morning of the 8th, when I made the arrangements to go to the police station, en route to the police department with my mother, I was ambushed and arrested at an ATM at a grocery store. And that was a false arrest. They claimed that there was a warrant for my arrest for assault, and there wasn't. We have already been able to disprove that. And even on my way to the police station, I asked the police officers to take me to go see Detective Wynn, and they did. And after speaking with him, and, you know, and answering his questions and providing all the information that I knew about my cousin's lifestyle and the possible suspects that might have been responsible for his murder, on that day they immediately arrested me. And what's interesting about me speaking with Detective Wynn is Detective Wynn had asked me if I had a problem or if I minded that our conversation be recorded, and I did not object. I wanted it recorded. And so after I spoke to Detective Wynn, he created his own investigative report and wrote a bunch of notes down, and wrote in a synopsis form. He wrote down what we discussed, and it's wrong. He clearly, he got a lot of the facts wrong. He listed information in that report that aren't true. He claimed that I gave him my cousin's Corvette key that day, which was a lie. I never did anything like that. And if I would have done that, he would have used that. He would have given it to the prosecution. They would have entered it as evidence, and they would have used it against me. They did not do that. And also, something else that's interesting about the audio tape is that he never turned that. Well, I can't say that for sure. I was going to say that he didn't turn it over to the prosecution, but if he did, they they kept it from my defense team, so we don't have it. And the reason why it's important is because it shows that everything that I shared with Detective Wynn, he got wrong with his investigative report. And it was that report that got the ball rolling for them to focus in and zero on me for a conviction. Well, I had a court-appointed attorney, and what's interesting about the court-appointed attorney they gave me, his name was J. Matthew Geller. He was not very experienced with capital punishment. 95% of his cases were all court-appointed. He was a previous prosecutor from the same county, and everything that I shared with him, he didn't care to hear me out. He just assumed from the very beginning. He just assumed that the police had the right man. He didn't offer a defense, and even during our discussions and our conversations, I shared with him what he needed to do to prove my innocence and to discredit the state's case. And even now, we've been able to discover documents that he had on his desk that he didn't care to review. Francois might have been able to share some of those with you, or you might have been able to read them on my website. But, you know, they weren't searching for the truth. The police weren't searching for the truth. We have discovered documents that shows initially before my trial, they were going to test evidence. There's evidence at the crime scene that they found, trace, hair, and fiber evidence, but they never tested any of it. So they weren't interested in who was there at the house. They zeroed in on me, and they focused on who was the easiest person to convict instead of searching for the truth and trying to find out who killed my cousin. It's hard. It's real hard. I live in a box 22 hours a day. Well, I'm in a cell 7 days a week, but 5 days I'm allowed to go outside for recreation for 2 hours. I don't always go outside. Some days some days they put me in the day room, but and it's just a larger cage to walk around and stretch my legs. When I have the opportunity to go outside, I will visit with. Usually they'll put me outside with another inmate, so those are my opportunities to have conversations with people. Sometimes it's difficult because, you know, not everybody wants to talk, and, you know, sometimes guys are paranoid and they don't really know if they should, you know, talk to you or trust you. And I understand where they're coming from. I'm a nice guy. I try to make conversation, but sometimes there are some guys that just don't care to talk. They just want to walk in circles and ignore you, which is fine. I do a lot of reading, listen to the radio, write letters. I've built some, you know, wonderful friends with people over the years, such as Francois and Veronica, and I try to read anything I can learn from. Well, it's real easy to get institutionalized because I see it around me all the time. You know, and even though I'm in prison, I escape through books or listening to music, but not everybody here can read. Not everybody here has a radio, so that in a sense they're in double prison. Not only are they imprisoned in their cell, they're imprisoned in their mind because they're not even educated enough to read. That's a blessing for me. At least I can read. But yeah, you know, I try to read anything I can learn from, whether it be the law, you know, art, medical stuff. Some of it's boring, but it keeps my mind busy. And my fear is that if I don't keep my mind busy and if I'm not working on my case or other projects, that I'll lose it, because I see it happen all the time. One day guys, they're fine, and the next day they're not, and they're either ready to drop their appeals and forfeit their life and get executed, or they go to a mental institution for a little bit and then come back, or they just I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's a sad, dreary life that we live. Well, talking is limited because we're housed in isolation. I've lived around this other gentleman before, and that's why we were just having a brief conversation, because we haven't seen each other since he was issued an execution date. And you know, even his case right now, along with mine, besides our two, there was, you know, right now in the Texas Supreme Court, they're sitting on 4 cases that have to do with innocence. You know, Governor Rick Perry in Simi Valley, California, during the Republican debate, mentioned that he can sleep at night and that he doesn't fear that innocent people have been executed, or that innocent men are here. And that's not true. I mean, time and time again, his associates have been able to share with him, not only with the 4 cases that are in the Supreme Court right now having to do with innocence, my case, Hank Skinner's, Cleve Foster, and Larry Swearingen. And without a doubt, Mr. Swearingen can prove his innocence, but yet the courts, they're not claiming that they don't accept his facts. They're saying that the information he's filing, he should have filed a long time ago. But that's not on him. That's not his responsibility for him having horrible court-appointed attorneys. And that's what a lot of the problem is here. Is, from at the very beginning stages when the foundation can be built, we're new to the criminal justice system. We learn as we go and as we bump into these speed bumps. And back then, 5 or 10 years ago, as our appeals are just starting or as we're getting convicted, we do what our attorneys tell us, and that's to sit here, look normal. They have the case under control. They know what they're doing. They're the pros, but yet they aren't doing anything. At least in my case, I know that they didn't. And time again, we've been able to prove and show that not only did the prosecution cut corners and misrepresent facts to the state, but the team that was appointed to help me didn't even look at the information that was in front of them. If they had they presented that to a jury, I wouldn't have been found guilty. Well, it's horrible. That gives me the motivation to keep fighting. Plus, I realize, what's outside of this horrible prison for me. There is a life outside there for me. And, it's not going to be hard at all for me to adapt to the free world. I've missed out on technology, some movies, but they won't take long to get back into the swing of things. Yeah. A normal day for me, it's from the minute I wake up to the time I go to sleep. There's gonna be I don't want to use the bad word, but there's always some kind of craziness, I guess you can say. There's always if it's not one thing, it's another. For instance, we haven't had hot water in 3 weeks. They came to look at it today, and they need some type of valve. It's going to take another week to fix. So we have to shower, and so each day there's going to be some mess to deal with, I guess you could say. And I just deal with it as best as possible. It's gonna let me put it to you this way. I've gotten real used to deal with disappointment, because around here it's a big part of my life, and I've learned to deal with it. And if I can just get through each day with some sort of smile on my face and communicating with my friends that I've made over the years, it gets me through. Well, what happened is, originally in 2005, I met Tammy through a mutual friend. Tammy favored the death penalty. I don't know if you know this, but she favored the death penalty, and she was in college at the time, and she was doing a paper, her thesis, on how inmates were gaming the system or manipulating the system by filing retardation claims. I don't have that claim, but the inmate that she initially contacted, he had that claim, and I was assisting him with his letters and communicating with Tammy. And she wrote me back, and she wrote a nice letter, but in essence, she stood her ground, and she assumed everybody here was guilty. She assumed everybody here had great attorneys. She assumed that the state was not going to execute somebody, or that they fully investigated every case before they executed somebody. And once I informed her of the system and the pitfalls and how it's a joke, and the truth of what's going on here, she slowly but surely turned around, and she challenged me on a lot of the things that I was sharing with her. And once I was able to have her look into some of the things that I was saying, not just with the system, but with the death penalty as a whole, and how it's misrepresented to the public, and that the average public, they don't know exactly what's going on back here. And unless you know somebody that's on death row or in this position, at that point, you're on their radar, and then they're able to be educated to see the system for what it is. Yeah. But I'm sorry. What I was going to say is, the way that our marriage works is, we initially met in 2005. We got married in July 7th of 2007, but we got married through proxy. During that time, I used to visit with a minister. Her name is Miss Irene, real sweet lady. She used to visit guys up here, and I built a friendship with Miss Irene. But Miss Irene was a licensed minister, and she actually married us through proxy. So Tammy's daughter Danielle is the one that stood in for proxy. But before we led up to the event of getting married and building a relationship, Tammy, she questioned me on a lot of. Originally, she thought I was, lying to her about my case and lying to her about the system and misrepresenting things. And when I was able to prove to her and show her that I wasn't and that I was telling the truth, then she became my biggest supporter. It was a game changer for my life. Not only did it, build inspiration for me and, lift me in my spirits in this horrible dungeon in this place, but it also, if it wasn't for Tammy, I would be dead right now. I would have already been killed, because even before Tammy came into my life, I had horrible attorneys, and once she was able to help me uncover the truth that the prosecution had turned over to my original defense team, and we found out that they didn't do anything with it. She was able to orchestrate and help me get the good attorneys that I have now, and luckily I'm in a good legal position now. Well, several positive things are going to happen. They tried to kill me at the end of August. Right, I had an execution date. Prior to that, the month before, my attorney was able to coordinate getting with the prosecution to have them withdraw my date to finally test the evidence that they found from the crime scene. So that was great news.
All officers, all stations, it is now count time. It is now count time.
Plus, with that being positive, my appeal was due to the Supreme Court, and it's still pending now. Now, on September 26th, they conferenced my case. That is right. On September 26th is when they conferenced my case, and since the conference, we haven't heard anything. My thinking is that they're going to put me aside, review my case to see if they align with some of the other cases that they've recently heard. Sometimes I'm lost for words. I feel like over the years I've lost my vocabulary. Okay. And keep in mind, other than visiting, with my wife and a few friends, I'm limited on conversations. I'm allowed to visit each week. Tammy, she tries to visit as often as she can. Sometimes she is able to make it each week. Sometimes she isn't. But in those weeks that she's not able to visit, I do visit with other friends. And over the years, I feel that my vocabulary and my communication skills are slipping. I do read a lot, yeah, and I read the newspaper every day as well. I do, yeah. They have a library, and you can order books, and they come around. They drop them off and pick them up about every 2 weeks. But I don't. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. When you order books through the library, they're missing pages, or they have notes in them, or a lot of them are damaged. But anything that I read or that I receive has to come from friends and supporters. I believe the atmosphere sucks. It is what you make of it. Some guys wake up horrible. They're not happy with, where they live, who they're around. My situation's different because I realize I have hope. I have a situation. I have, I know where I stand with my appeals, and that I have a very, very strong chance of going home. Not everybody has that. A lot of the guys know that they're going to end up dying here, and they just go through each day managing to get through their day knowing that they're going to die. There's so many different personalities here as well. People come from all walks of life. A lot of racism here as well. Between people that are of different nationalities. You have gangs here. It is what you make of it. No, I've never been in a gang. I don't have any tattoos. I don't even speak Spanish. Well, it just depends. Some of the guys get along. In each section, they try to keep it even. They won't put too many black guys or too many Mexican guys or too many white guys all in one section. They'll try to keep it even. There's a couple of white guys, a couple of Mexican guys, and they try to keep things even. But even with keep in mind some of the guys here came from population prison population for killing other inmates. So even, because of those situations and being involved in gangs, there's a lot of tension here. And but I mean, inmates, I mean, they do try to hurt each other, but they really can't, because we're in isolation cells. Anywhere and everywhere we're we're in handcuffs, and we're not allowed with. No inmate here is going to be, in an open room with another inmate. Yeah. The staff treats you how they treat them, for the most part. If you treat them respectful, and if you are nice to them and talk to them in a decent manner, 9 times out of 10, and the majority of the time, they're gonna treat you with respect. But there are a handful of officers that are rude to you, no matter how nice you are. They're gonna be mean towards you, or have an attitude, and I don't let that affect me. I mean, it does most folks, and sometimes I wonder. Well, I don't wonder. I think they do that on purpose to trigger you to be angry, or to be violent, or to have you be upset. Without Tammy, I'd be dead, and it's great, because even getting married and building a relationship with Tammy, and building a marriage, and we've built a wonderful friendship as well. But through her, I've met her children. Well, I've met Danielle. I've also met the grandkids. They come here and visit also, and I mean, she's wonderful. She's amazing. I mean, if it wasn't for her, I mean, I would already be dead. Yeah, she's a wonderful, genuine, amazing person. I mean, I love her. Yeah. It's hard. We've never touched hands. We've never even had a hug. Those are difficult things. It's hard to deal with. I mean, but what we do, and we realize, what was in stake when building a relationship, when with getting married, and we understand what we have to go through. In a sense, she's in a prison outside of this place. We understand, the pitfalls and everything that comes with it, and we understood that, and we knew that going in. But we've done it. We've been successful with it, and I'm proud of her. She's a trooper. She really is. Regardless with whatever happens with the courts, our marriage, our relationship, no matter what, we're going to be in each other's lives, and she's going to do everything that she can to always help me and get me home. That's why I tell you, she's an amazing woman, and we have bumped into some situations in our life where we thought that we didn't actually think that things would come to an end, but we've come to some tough crossroads, and we've been able to lick our wounds and get through it and get over them. And that's what makes things, that believe it or not, that makes things better and stronger. I'll have a lot more hope and promise right now. But when you're facing an execution date, you have to prepare for that. I was a couple of days. I'm sorry. I was 2 weeks away from filling out, my execution witness list. Who would, Francois was going to be kind enough to come visit. Obviously my wife, and having to fill out and turn in that paperwork as to what I'm going to do with my body, what I'm going to do with my remains. Having to deal with that was such a, it was horrible. And in addition to that, I had already, started to write letters saying goodbye to people, not knowing whether or not I was going to get a stay. I felt hopeful for one, but I see the system for what it is. Even without a doubt, when guys can prove they're innocent, they're still executed. So it's not always about justice here, especially in this state. It's about revenge, and the state doesn't want to accept the truth that wrongful convictions occur all the time, even across the country. Well over 100 guys have been exonerated from death row. Some because of DNA evidence, some because of wrong eyewitness testimony, and some because of, the real killer just came forward and admitted to the crime in those cases. So after 100 times, at what number does society, or even the states or the government, need to see to realize there's a problem? Right now we're at over 100. Do they need to see 200? Do they need to see 300? What is that number of wrongful convictions that they need to see to end all this craziness? It's horrible. I live a horrible life, but I make the best of it, and I try to have a positive attitude. And some days I don't always have a positive attitude, but I also realize that I'm in a better position right now than I've ever been, even though I'm at the end of my rope with my appeals. And plus, I mean, in my heart, I mean, I do know and I feel I'm going home. I just don't know when. It's going to be a matter of time. And once my attorneys and our team of investigators untangle some of these knots and put this information, back before the court or before a jury, then I'll be going home. Yeah, and I look forward to that.